3, 2, 1. Ian Hunter. You know what's the funnest thing about sitting down, or the weirdest thing about sitting down and doing these things and these long conversations, is figuring out how to start it and how to end it. Like, I don't know how to start that. Like, you know, say if I had, who's one of the guys I had an archaeologist in last week, one of the guys, and I'm like, okay, let's start talking about archaeology and, you know, the human migration. But I'm like, how do I even start that? Like, I just like, where do people come from? Like, he was like a North American migration. He was actually the curator of archaeology at the New York State Museum, oh, cool. And he specialized in colonization of the Americas by the first people that like came over on the Bering Strait, Beringia, whatever. Yeah. So, yeah, I know. I kind of know where, like, okay, let me ask a question, and then he'll just start talking. And then, but I'm also like, but when do I end it? Because I was like, most of the time when we start them, I think only once out of the 20 or so I've done of these, I've said, hey, how long can you go? Like, that only happened once. So it's always like, okay, I feel like we're about an hour right now. We're about an hour and a half right now. We're approaching 2 hours. Shit, man, how much time? We didn't talk about how much time. Yeah. So that's the funnest thing. I don't know how to start this. Ian Hunter. Hi. Oh, how are you? So, because I haven't really gone back and listened to too many of the podcasts, but I'll watch like the first 5 minutes just to see how clumsy I am. I'm like, okay, I gotta tighten that up, but I don't know how to do it. I'm like, I gotta tighten up my endings and tighten up my beginnings, but also it's just maybe not. Maybe I don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, if you like doing it the way you're doing, where it's just a kind of free-form conversation, then I think that's the only way you can do it.
Especially when it's somebody that just agrees to come in and talk, like you. Like, what are we gonna... I don't know. But you were here for 3 minutes, and all of a sudden we're talking about train rides through Wyoming. Yeah. Like, where did we take that turn? All right, so how about... Do you play chess?
I do. Not very well, but I do.
How long have you been playing chess?
I learned when I was about 13 years old or so.
Like learn, like a professor? Like a teacher?
No, just casually playing with friends.
You might, actually you're out of the screen if you do want to come up. Yeah, I'm going to keep this here now, like I said, to monitor it. Dude, I forgot how goddamn tall you are.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Chairs aren't made for me, though.
No, they're not.
Isn't really made for me. I feel like tall people were better suited for outdoor living conditions.
Dude, no doubt. Yeah. Where's your family from? Are you like Vikings?
I grew up here. So
but I mean, like, where'd you come from? Do you think like northern
Germany and Scotland?
All right.
So, I mean, probably some Vikings mixed in there somewhere, but.
Well, have you ever watched the show Vikings?
No.
The History Channel. Well, it's on Amazon Prime now, and I really only watch a handful of shows a year, and then this has been my one for the last 2 months or so, 2 or 3 months. Finished one before that, and then don't really make an objective to watch too much TV, but when I find something like cool, historic like that, like Vikings, I'm like, okay, I'm in. The dudes are so big. So now, whenever I see a big person, like on the street, like you, I'm like, oh, he's probably a Viking. He's probably a Viking, especially with the beard and shit. But that's what was terrifying watching that show, is those dudes were so big. Even the women, they were monsters. Like we look at Scandinavian people now, we're like, God damn, you're just a different type of person. I just think of all these poor. A lot of the show centers around the Vikings getting in their ships and invading England, and this is like tiny English people, like like kind of malnourished, like just maybe emerging or heading into the Dark Ages, whatever. It was pre-Dark Ages, so what, like 800 AD or something like that, I think is around the time period. And these poor little English people, and then these boats, just like an armada of like 20 or 30 ships coming at them. And I don't even think in the show the English didn't even have ships, so I don't even know if they were like, what? How do we even make a ship? And then all these massive dudes would be coming off of this with long hair, beards, and axes and just murk them. Yeah. I'm like, what a terrible way to live. Like they would always wait till the spring. Obviously, the water would be frozen, or you just wouldn't go during the winter. But as soon as spring showed up, these English people had to worry about being invaded by these monster humans.
Yeah, who are like warrior style. Just live the warrior lifestyle.
Dude. I was talking about this with my girlfriend last night while we were watching it, because one of the repeated things throughout the show is when a woman be pregnant, they're all like, please be a boy, please be a man, please be a man, please be a man. And I'm like, your natural reaction to that is like, oh man, that's kind of fucked up. Like, what's wrong with a girl? Girls are great. But that's today, because living life is so easy. Back then, I was like, I was talking, mentioned it to her, I'm like, I feel like I should hate them for saying that. That's kind of BS, just be rooting for a dude. But back then, it was so hard to live. It was so difficult. Like you said, like big dudes are more conducive to living outdoors. Everyone back then lived outdoors. Like they were little huts and crap, but they weren't isolated like we are. Like we got walls, we got locks on our doors. Nothing's getting in. Wild animals are not coming in here. And I was like, so you wanted men because it would make everyone's life easier, because they were strong. We're stronger, we're bigger, we're hunters, we're defenders, we're protectors, and we're builders. So I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel like you did want more men back then, because everyone was dead by 30. So you wanted to like, all right, we got to keep genes going. We got to keep genes going. What's our best route to survival?
Plus, if there's a 50-50 split and all the men are going out to battle, a lot of them are coming back dead.
Right.
So,
right.
You want to try to keep that mix as even as possible.
I'm gonna assume that somebody in your Scottish heritage got like made a baby with a Viking.
It's quite possible.
All right. So what's going on? So you play chess, but not well. You still play now?
I haven't played in like months.
I hadn't played in like a solid year, maybe 2 years, and then I started playing again a couple months ago, and in the last few years, my brain I feel has gotten sharper. I'm like, like I had like a switch go off. I'm like, okay, I feel smarter for whatever reason, or just more clarity. And I always get my ass kicked at chess. Always, like nonstop. I'm like, why do I suck? Why did I not see that? So I always just thought I kind of sucked at chess, but I liked the game. Once I started playing again a few months ago, and I got a couple nice games going on now too. That's why it's fresh on my mind. I'm like, oh, I don't suck at this so much anymore. Like, I could see the moves and stuff after not playing for a couple of years. So it's just kind of like I'm playing a different type of chess now, and I'm trying to figure out why and what that means. There, I got a little hippie on you.
You're probably just thinking more strategically. I mean, I feel like we start to think more strategically as we get older. I don't know. But
that's one theory. I started around when I was 13 as well too. I remember sitting down in front of my buddy's marble chessboard. He was the only friend I ever had with a chessboard, and sat down and he taught me how to play. And I remember just thinking, I had no strategy. I just remember it was like, that guy does what? That's pretty fun. Oh, my queen, let me get my queen out there and start some shit. And then now it's just like, no, that's not the best way to do it. I actually just finished a book by Josh Waitzkin. Do you know who he is? He was do you remember that movie? I think it came out in like in '94. It was Searching for Bobby Fischer. Yeah. The chess movie with the little kid. Well, that little kid was Josh Waitzkin. So this is a dude who was like world champion, world master at chess, or at least national champion. I don't know if he ever won the world, but I think he is a grandmaster. But anyways, the book is about learning. And he just uses chess, like how he learned chess, how he thinks he got so good at chess. And he also became the best in the world at that. Let's just say at least the best in the country. And he also, after that, decided a new challenge. He wanted to, it's Tai Chi push hands. I don't know if you're familiar with martial arts at all, but it's like a weird form of, I had never heard of it until I read the book, and then I looked up on YouTube what the hell push hands was. And it's a little intense. Like at first I was like, Tai Chi, but isn't that like the Zen, old people in the park thing? But push hands is like intense stuff. Like it is a martial arts where you're hurting each other, or trying not to hurt each other. You're just using each other's force and just manipulation and balance and focus and taking someone else's energy and absorbing it. And he became the best in the world at that. He won the world champion at that. Like within 5 or 10 years after being a world champion chess player. And he's just like, and so the book is just about the art of learning. Like how he's just taken that formula from being the best at one thing and becoming the world's best at something else that would seem not related. Yeah. And I'm like, start connecting little pieces in my mind. I'm like, okay, so in the last few years, I've picked up a bunch of weird different hobbies. And maybe now those kind of thinking hobbies, like trying to learn physics, like really giving it a shot and trying other things and just new activities. And maybe now I learned some crap from that, and now I see the chessboard differently. I had no idea I was going to talk. I want you to ramble.
I'm not much of a rambler myself.
I love rambling though.
Yeah.
Like that's when I have someone come in, I'm like, dude, especially when the professors really like talking.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, dude, if you want to go on like a 10-minute tangent, go nuts. And more than once or twice, they'd be like, okay, I'll do that. I love it. And then I let them do it. And then I think they catch themselves. Because like I just caught myself. Because I've just realized I'm just kind of this the stream of consciousness thinking. And let me check this and make sure we're still good. Audio says it's working. Says we're recording.
Good.
I have yet to. So the dude that I think I don't know where the audio is. It's in an MP4 file. That's what this is gonna automatically save to. And I don't know where the audio is. The video looks good. It looks real good. I emailed him. I was like, hey, something's up with the audio. I'm gonna have somebody smarter than me look at it, see if they could figure it out. I don't know if the audio is there, man.
Wouldn't the audio be embedded into the MP4 file?
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, the problem was it was this exact setup, except I think that USB jack might be jacked up, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so this was on, but when I had it plugged into that jack, I have a red light here that shows me that it's on, and we could hear ourselves right now. So I'm like, okay, so it's recording. Like it never been an issue with the audio. And then the dude gave me like almost 2 hours, and I still feel awful. I feel less awful than I did a week ago when I was like, where's my audio? Because I still don't know if it should be embedded. I should just be able to hit play and it's there, right?
Yeah.
And it even recognizes, it says there's a track, but I'm an idiot, so I need having someone else look at it. Please tell me there's audio in there somewhere, but I don't know how it could be. If it's, like you said, it's embedded in the file, but it actually let me convert it into an MP3, an audio only, but it's just dead air.
Huh.
I'm scared, dude.
That's likely, it's probably the USB port, and it was able to charge or operate the device, power the device, but not take the information in from the device.
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Shit. So that's the worst feeling, though, is feeling like I wasted 2 hours of someone's time.
You had a conversation.
I did. It was a fantastic conversation. It was a two-way conversation, and he seemed to enjoy it, said he enjoyed it afterwards, but...
Did
it's
you
also
have a specific purpose for coming in and doing?
Yeah, he was a professor at Union.
Yeah,
and he is a history professor, history of specifically of nuclear science and Nazi Germany, scientists and social stuff, basically World War II and Nazism and science.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of very fascinating things that I learned that I was like, okay, I didn't know that. Oh, all right, that was a misconception I had, and I'm like, shit. What were those things? Because in conversation, I'm like, oh, okay, a good one. I do remember a morsel or two, but yeah, it was a very specific conversation, and it was good. It was a good one. And then I'm like, 2 hours. The fact, losing 2 hours, if it was just me doing this for 2 hours and I lost it, I'd be like, whatever, I'll just talk again. But when somebody else's time is wasted, it's an awful feeling.
You're talking about a professor, though. I'm sure his words are recorded all over the place.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. See, I'm just giving you my inner thoughts right now because I'm like, I am terrified right now that this isn't working. But I ran through a bunch of checks before you came. All right, whatever. All right,
if it doesn't work, that's fine too. I'm not worried about it.
As long as we're having a nice time.
Yeah.
All right, so what's been going on? I saw you like a month or so ago, and you have invented something. You're an inventor.
Somewhat, yes. Simple little invention. I got a new prototype for it, so that's nice, and working on getting it to market. I haven't patented it yet, so I can't really speak about it in this type of setting, lest I publicly disclose the invention and lose my rights to patenting it.
Of course. But it's I knew you couldn't talk about it, but I knew I just knew it's still just a fascinating, fun thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, hey, dude, you're an inventor. Like, I'm an inventor. Yeah, I'm just working on the patent. So you got the patent lawyer.
Yeah.
Still trudging along, going through the... What do they call it? What do they call it when you have to look up what's on file, the patent agency?
That's a patent search.
Yeah, what do they call that, though?
A patent search. I'm pretty sure.
It was another weird term that I learned when I semi-patented something a few years ago. that I was like, oh, that's what you call it. Oh, just the artwork.
Oh, wait.
They call everything the artwork.
The artwork search or prior art search.
Prior art, art. And I was like, art? Like, does that mean you just draw things? It's like, no, it's the whole thing. It's the whole written description.
Yeah.
That was what was kind of fascinating about doing the art search and looking up to see if there's anything that I was going to potentially patent, to like look up if there are any similar patents to it, was reading the details of the patent. Like, you really, like, it's such, I really had a great respect for the patent office. I'm like, whoa, this really tells you how to do everything. Like, when you disclose a patent,
you have to disclose every single little detail. And I think anybody who does it without a lawyer is foolish.
Right.
Because they are practiced in that. You're not.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just so many words, so much detail. There's so much research involved. Yeah. And it made me, I looked up some of the Elon Musk Tesla patents at the time. Like, because he had these patents, like whether it was for the car or for the batteries or whatever the hell he's working on, all this stuff that I don't understand. It's a very esoteric topic. But I would read some of these patents and I'm like, okay, this tells you how to do it. Like, these guys, they own the patent, but the coolest thing about him is he's like, we're not going to protect it.
Yeah.
Like, we created this. Here's the patent. I only did the patent so that everyone else can copy and just take this to the next step. And I'm like, God damn, what a cool dude.
Yeah.
And so I read, I forget which ones I read about him. Maybe it was something with the self-driving, the automated driving thing. And I'm like, this just tells you how to do it.
How long is that patent?
I don't know. What did they go for? 15 years or 25 years?
No, I meant like how long is the document itself?
Oh, God, man.
That's gotta be.
I stopped reading where it stopped making sense to me. I was like, I don't know, because obviously it's going to get into really specific engineering terms and computer technology terms. I'm like, okay, you lost me. But when it gives it the brief description or whatever it is, I read a handful of those. I'm like, and then just skimmed over that stuff. Like, oh, he really does tell you how to do this. Because that was the coolest thing about finding patents, is like, it tells you how to do it, and it's up to you if you have to defend it or not. I also learned about trademarks at the same time, and because I had this misconception that, you know, all these big companies, say like a McDonald's, it goes out and sues somebody for trademark, and, you know, with their M, with the golden arch or something, golden arches, whatever it is. And I'm like, why would you go pick on that poor mom and pop shop? Like, what a bully you are, McDonald's. But then the more I learned about it, I'm like, oh, they have to sue, or else they're going to lose the right. Like, they open up the floodgates for other people to use their trademark. Like, they have to go after every instance that they're aware of somebody infringing on their trademark, or else they start to lose protection. So, like, I'm like, okay, maybe it's not so much the big bad guys going after the little guys. It's like they're kind of obligated to have to go after those people, to not let anyone.
I didn't know that. I figured it was just to maintain their reputation. I'd be worried about somebody else selling an inferior product with my name or something along those lines. And
do you know why I thought of McDonald's?
Why?
Because of Coming to America. You had to have seen Eddie Murphy. McDonald's. Yeah, McDonald's. One of my favorite scenes is when the owner of McDonald's he's in his back office, and he has the McDonald's like employee handbook or corporate handbook, and he's like skimming through, like cheating off of it. It's like, he made it so obvious. I think that was Samuel L. Jackson's first movie. I mean, it's not even like it's just like, I think his daughter walks in. It's a very subtle thing. Like, he's got his glasses on, like he's studying real hard, and then his daughter walks in, I think, and you see on the front it says McDonald's franchise handbook or something, like, he's like, oh, hey honey, hi, pleased to meet you. And then the whole time, and then the whole theme is that he's like, no, we're not copying off of McDonald's. We're not copying off of McDonald's at all. Did you know that was Samuel L. Jackson's, I think, his very first movie?
No.
You know that scene when they're in the McDowell's and the guy comes in with the shotgun and is like saying he's going to rob the place? That's Samuel L. Jackson, and then Eddie Murphy beats the shit out of him with a mop handle.
Yeah, I remember that part.
God. It's funny to think now that I have to date myself. Like, I'm dating myself with a Coming to America reference. Although, I think that was like 88 or something. I was still like a baby. I was like, I was 7 years old, I think. In 88, I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
All right. You know restaurants.
To an extent, yes.
Do it. What do you know about restaurants?
What do you want to know?
Well, you started a restaurant. You were a restaurant owner.
Yeah.
Dude, how did that start?
I just wanted to open up a business, and I thought back on all the businesses that ideas that I'd had over the years, and this was one that kind of stuck out just because there wasn't any really good fried chicken in the area, so I wanted to bring the good fried chicken here. And I did that, and we were open for about 5 years, and we closed on our 5th year anniversary.
Oh, on the anniversary?
On the anniversary.
Did you just want to, you did that intentionally?
Well, I knew I knew that where it was, it wasn't going to get me where I wanted to be. So I made the decision, and we had quite a following, a lot of customers that really loved us, so I wanted to give everybody a chance to, come in again and say goodbye and whatnot. So we announced it about 2 weeks ahead of time, and we had been planning it for about a month and a half or so at that point. So it was just good timing, I think.
Gotcha. And 5 years feels good. Like
yeah,
5 years,
nice. Yeah.
That's a nice solid number,
yeah.
And especially in the restaurant world.
Yeah.
That's a solid number. When did you start to feel like you had to pull out?
Probably about year 4 or so. And it was just a really hard decision to come to, a lot of denial on my part, and me just trying to like distance myself a little bit, and then realizing that's not quite going to work. And just,
what do you mean? What do you mean distancing?
Well, I figured I was burnt out, so I'd take a vacation, and I was able to go to just travel the country for about a month, and that was really nice. But I came back, and that feeling was still there. It was just tough.
And what feeling do you mean?
Just of being burnt out, of feeling stuck and overwhelmed. It's a lot to do to own a restaurant, especially when you're working in the restaurant on top of it. It's just very, very stressful.
There's for real legitimate no days off. I mean, as an owner, typically.
I had days off, which was nice, but like, yeah.
But I mean, would there still be paperwork and phone calls to answer?
There'd be something to do, yeah. I'm dreading that phone call coming that says like, oh, this person didn't show up. And, like, I'd have to go into work. All of that, so.
How many hours were you putting in a week, you think?
On the clock, about 40 to 50. And that does include all the other stuff, the restaurant depot runs, which is like almost every single day.
Right.
And so on and so forth. But
what do you take from that, though? The 5 years.
What do I take from it?
Yeah, what do you take from it?
I don't know. I think large part is, like, one, I shouldn't try to do something like that by myself. It's something that you should do with a team that is equally invested. Not necessarily a team of employees, because you'll never really be able to get the employees to have the same motivation that you do. And yeah, the other take home is to do considerably more research before opening up in a specific location.
What? Why? Where'd you go wrong there?
I didn't really do any research.
You just found an open building?
I saw for a rent sign, and I called, and I went in, and a few weeks later I signed a lease. So I figured Troy was on the up and up, or on the coming up, and I figured we'd do pretty well, and we did. We definitely had growth in sales year over year, but
it's a tough game, man.
Work, yeah.
It's a tough game.
You have to get everything perfect. That's the big take home, is that owning a restaurant is kind of like, you have to think of it like a wagon wheel with all these different spokes that need to be tuned properly for it to roll smoothly, and I was missing quite a few of those spokes myself, so I wasn't really able to get it to the point where I wanted to see it.
Like, you didn't know what the spokes were?
I knew what the spokes were. They weren't necessarily my strengths. Finding somebody to manage the team that was like really qualified and setting them up for success didn't come secondhand to me.
Is that because you didn't have experience running a restaurant, or you just are kind of like not that guy anyways?
Partially. I do like being in charge of a team, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's part of it. I think a lot of the time when you have like a manager of a place like Chipotle or McDonald's or something like that, they do have that handbook that they can go based off of. I didn't have that handbook, so that's a big thing. Maybe I should go talk to McDonald's and steal a franchise handbook and then try to open up again.
Yeah, I'm sure those things are gold. Like,
I mean, there's millions of dollars that go into those documents.
right.
And if you're just starting a mom and pop, you can't compete with that.
That's tough, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the food, I mean, you can make money in food, kind of, but it seems to be, I heard this a long time ago. The place I was working, they invested in some restaurant franchises, and one of the big questions was, well, do these things serve alcohol? This is when they were considering putting their money into it, like, 'cause that's a moneymaker, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I didn't have the alcohol really.
that's tough because you think of those margins, man. Like,
Yeah.
on a piece of chicken, a chicken sandwich, between labor, keeping the lights on, buying the food, time.
At the end of the day, if you're doing everything perfectly, you're looking at about 10% profit margin.
Tough. That is tough. That hurts. But you throw booze in there.
And you get a little bit more cushion.
Yeah. Huh. Would you do a restaurant ever again? Is it a partner thing? Because that was the first issue you had.
I'm thinking about it actually. It's funny. I had another invention for a silly little foot massager. So there was this customer who was coming in pretty much every day and like would eat the chicken and waffles and sit at the counter and just like shoot the shit with everybody. And as I was closing, he was interested in opening up another location with me. And this gentleman, he's a trained podiatrist, but he is not practicing. He works for a pharmaceutical company because he's making more money with them, and he wants to invest in businesses and get things going.
Okay.
So anyway, I had a silly little invention for a foot massager, and I reached out to him, and he called me back like instantly. And this was on Monday, and he's like, "Oh man, you're gonna live forever. We were just talking about you this weekend." And apparently he had moved to Ithaca because his wife is the vice president of Ithaca College, and there's no chicken there. He wants to bring chicken there. So anyway, I'm going out to Ithaca next week to talk to him and see if it's a possibility.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, but my big thing is I need to make sure that we're both on the same page where we're looking at this as an investment and asset, not necessarily a job for me, because if we're talking about it as a job, maybe if we pull in $1 million a year, that's $100,000 profit. We split it two ways. I'm seeing $50,000 for 50 hours a week, and that's 50 hours a week I can't spend on anything else,
But that's a thought. But that's the thing is you're mining, right? You're like, okay, I'll go talk to whenever you meet someone that has an idea or is interested in partnering. Like, that's gold. It's like, okay, let's sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Because that's been the same problem I've had for a long time, too, is, okay, I have some ideas, but I need a really committed partner. And it's tough. And it's like, you're looking for a committed partner, I'm looking for a committed partner, but it's like, would we even be able to do something together? I don't know. I don't know if our interests or skills. It's like finding that weird person.
Yeah.
It's like finding that person that's strong where you're weak. Like you said, like you figured out your weaknesses pretty early on about like training the staff, and I mean you were learning chicken at the restaurant business at the same time.
I was
right?
learning along with the staff. Yeah.
Right.
So it was tough, and I mean I'll say we did really well considering that. I didn't know how to cook or anything. Everything fell right into place. Found a great chef to start off with, Josh Coletto, who did a really good job. And I mean, we became known as a restaurant that had awesome fried chicken, some of the best fried chicken in the area. So that's really good. That taught me that you don't have to know how to do something to necessarily be good at it or to do it well. It's just the other aspects. I didn't really have the money to fill in those blanks,
Gotcha. You got me thinking about fried chicken so much right now. I was, full disclosure, like 3 weeks ago, I do crave fried chicken all the time. Like, all the time. I love fried chicken. But I take a while off of it because I'm like, yeah, it's just not good for you. But like 3 weeks ago, my girlfriend she was away for the day. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this today. I'm not going to get caught. I went to KFC. I went to KFC for the first time in probably 5 years. This is the last time I was at KFC. But say what you will about KFC. They do fried chicken pretty good. Like, considering. I'm not comparing it to mom and pop flying chicken man, but they do okay in a pinch. Like, if you're like, I need some fried chicken. Like, they're better than, like, not like a Popeyes fan. Or
I would say Popeyes over KFC all day.
Okay, good. I'm glad you say that. You've given me something new to experience.
Yeah.
Because I haven't had Popeyes in probably about 15 years. And I went to school in Philly. and downtown Center City, Philly, there was a Popeyes, and I went there before, and it was just gross. I remember just being like, ugh. But I was also used to going to a little bit West Philly with my brother dorm mates who were like from downtown, like kind of like ghetto DC. They're like, Doug, I'll show you where to get some good fried chicken. So I go to like kind of the ghetto of West Philly with them, and the chicken place we would go to, man, would have like bulletproof glass like in it, and you had to like put your money in this rotating spinning thing, and then they would give you your chicken like through. I'm like, God damn, this is like prison. Like, this is terrifying, but it was delicious. It was completely delicious, and I was like, this is fantastic chicken. So I love that. So one day I ended up going to Popeyes, and it just did not reach that level, and I've kind of written Popeyes off since then. Yeah. But you being a chicken man, I'm all ears now. Tell me.
Last time I went to KFC, they took the wing, I got 2 fried chicken wings and the French fries, because I do like those potato wedges.
All right, yeah.
But they didn't even like dangle the wing or like separate it out at all. It was just all still like this little wing that was kind of, when you buy them, they come like kind of locked in, so it's just this like solid piece. So yeah, they just like tossed that solid wing brick in like the flour and fried it, and like,
so it was the lack of caring.
Yeah, it was just
that your guys are lazy. But that's the thing, like people are phoning. I think that's a job you do phone in.
Oh yeah,
like fast food worker.
Yeah.
Like working for a local owner where you're working with the owner, that's a way different thing. Like, you probably could even consider that more of, they of course weren't as invested as you, but when you are working with a small business like that with the owner, you are way more invested than someone at KFC who's like, I don't give a fuck.
See, I almost think that it's bad for the owner to work in the business like that, because it gives there's a separation between the owner and the employees, whereas if you have a manager who's there, like, there's not that same separation between the manager and the employees. So I feel like it's easy for the employees to grow resentment if they see you doing well or stuff like that.
That is definitely a theory. I think my perspective, why I think the other way, comes from my experience when I was at Drexel. I worked at Quiznos. It was my first job in food industry ever. So I was like 20. Yeah, I was 21. I worked there for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And there was 2 owners who had just opened this Quiznos. And they were roughly our age, like early 30s, mid 30s. And two awesome, just hanging out, fun dudes. And they were always in there working with us. And I was like, okay, I know the owners. I want to help them out.
Owners?
Yeah, they were the franchise owners. So this is way different than Flying Chicken, but still, these were the owners. They kind of ran it, of course, according to the franchise, but they were there all the time. And I appreciate that. Like, I wanted to work better because I knew them and I liked them. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this awesome for you guys. And they hired a manager, and this guy was kind of a scumbag anyways, but I didn't raise my game for him or like feel as invested. If like when the owners were there, I was like, all right, Brian, all right, let's do this. All right, Scott, let's do this. But when that manager was there, who actually they fired, I think, because he said something really shady to like the couple of the girl workers that were there. Right. And the owners actually asked me, like, hey man, have you seen like whatever his name was, Mike? Have you seen Mike like talk to the girls like this or say something? I'm like, yeah, I've seen some like weird shady shit about him. So they actually fired him. But the owners would always come to me and complain too. Like, we kind of became friends, like as much as a 35 and a 21-year-old kid can be friends. And we used to go out and drink too. So we were friends, but that's just from my perspective. I'm like, okay, there was no resentment, but maybe all at the same time is because I was in school and I knew it was temporary. And, I knew that this wasn't the end.
Yeah.
But when there's somebody that I guess, like, for the next, like, this is their life, right? Like, because that's one of those jobs that we all agree AI needs to take over, robots need to take over, right? Like, we don't want...
It's a difficult one for AI to take over.
Go on.
Well, just cooking in general. I mean, you wouldn't be able to find a restaurant, say, like Peck's, that was run by robots. Yeah.
No. I'm talking
food. Yeah,
I'm thinking fast food, like
particularly
a KFC.
With like the kiosks up front, so that you don't have to worry about dealing with a counter person. I feel like most people are more capable of pushing the buttons on the screen anyway.
Right. I think either AI or everyone needs to be Chick-fil-A. Like those are the
Chick-fil-A
happiest
is-
employees. Those are just like when you walk into Chick-fil-A, you could tell they're genuinely friendly to you. Like they mean it. Like they really, it's not a fraud. Like anytime, God, it's been forever that I walked into Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King. But those people, I'm like, oh, you're not happy to be here. So I think Chick-fil-A, let's not put robots in there. I like people in Chick-fil-A because they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And we're getting one
They do
pretty
a
soon,
great
right?
job. I don't know what we're getting up here. I heard a while ago we were supposed to get one up in Latham or something, but yeah, Chick-fil-A is just out of this world. It blows me away. They have the highest average store sales volume out of any fast food franchise, and they're closed one day a week. And it's like about $800,000 more than any other fast food franchise that they're pulling in a year. It's insane. Per store.
Per store.
Yeah.
They just make money. They print money. Like they don't, and that's the thing. Like we've been hearing about this one that we're supposed to get around here, Albany, whether it was Latham or Malta or area somewhere up there, and it's like they take so long to open a franchise. Like the process. I remember looking into the process a few years ago, and of course it'd be nice if you had your own money and like, hey, I have a couple $1 million. I'd like to open a franchise, but they don't even put that much weight in that at all.
No,
like they put weight into
your investment.
Are you a good person?
$15,000. Honestly, it's one of the cheapest franchises to start. Yeah,
really. Because did they give it to you in a form of a loan?
No, that's what I heard. You put in $15,000 and you operate the franchise. They own the property. And they rent out the property to you. I believe in exchange for the property, you pay about 17% of your sales. And then after that, they take 50% of pre-sale tax or pre-tax profit. So at the end of the day, a Chick-fil-A franchisee, you'll make about $100,000 to $200,000 a year.
Easy.
Yeah.
Like printing, like every time you go to Chick-fil-A, there's a
line.
They're the first fast food I ever saw that has 2 lines in the drive-thru.
That was a large part of my decision to close the restaurant, actually. It was I was driving up from South Carolina, and we stopped at a Chick-fil-A, and it's the first time I'd ever seen something like this. You got a McDonald's right here and a Chick-fil-A right next to it, and a line wrapped around the restaurant, parking lot filled at Chick-fil-A, and nobody at McDonald's. And that really signified to me that the market is transitioning. People are really getting sick of the crappy fast food, but they still want it fast. And Chick-fil-A produces a higher quality product, but they still produce it at the same speed, so that's why they kill it. They absolutely kill it.
I had a bit. I'm glad. You don't know how I feel right now to talk to somebody who gets excited about Chick-fil-A. This is an addiction I've kind of like tapered off just because we have none around here. But when I lived in South Florida for 10 years, there were days, I do not exaggerate, there were days when I would have Chick-fil-A 4 or 5 times in a day. The most I ever had it one day was 7 times. It was pretty bad, man. But the 7 times is a little bit of a story behind that. It was my friend and I were driving. Ironically enough, we were driving from South Florida to Atlanta, and we stopped at Chick-fil-A. Like that was all of our meals. That was 7 times in one day. I had Chick-fil-A driving.
How do you have 7 meals driving from Florida? Oh, you said South Florida?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
so a little bit longer. Probably, what, 10, 12 hours?
Yeah, ballpark.
Yeah.
Well, no, not 10 or 12. It would be closer to 8-ish.
How do you eat 7 meals in that time frame?
Well, not just on that drive. I gotta say, when we got into Atlanta, we went to the Chick-fil-A. It's the what did it start out as? The Dwarf House.
Oh, the Dwarf House. Yes.
So that was part of it too. That was like actually like a sit down like diner almost.
It's really cool.
It's really. Did you ever walk through the little door?
Yeah. Well, no.
Well, you're a monster. Wait, you're a Viking. You're a Viking. You can't walk through that.
But no, I saw one in Rome, Georgia, and I thought that was pretty awesome.
Dude, we went to the very first Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was.
I got chicken and waffles there, though. I was not all that impressed. I
no,
like their chicken nuggets.
Their chicken and waffles are not that good.
Breakfast was no better.
It was meh. It was meh.
Yeah.
But
the full service was pretty interesting, and they just have service down. They've put so much research and everything. And just in this one little aspect. I mean, you say thank you to me, and there's a multitude of responses I can give you. Mm-hmm. You're welcome, no problem, so on and so forth. But they say my pleasure. And that is like the single best response that you can say to thank you. It's like, no, really, thank you, because it was a pleasure for me to give you this experience. And it says all of that in just 2 words. And you use it every single time.
I say my pleasure like a lot just in normal conversation now. Like,
I was
I actually say it
really
for,
though.
as far as a tax return, if I do somebody's taxes, I thank you, my
Yeah.
pleasure. Like, there's something honest about it. I remember the
Yeah.
first time I walked Chick-fil-A, somebody said my pleasure. I was like, oh, that was a weird thing that they just did on their own. Then I go to a different Chick-fil-A, and somebody else said it too. I'm like, oh, they trained them to say my pleasure. These guys are brilliant.
I went to a Chick-fil-A in Massachusetts with my girlfriend a couple of weeks ago. We were driving out to
Yep.
Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
I've been to that one. I know the one you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
When we go into this kid, I mean, I'm just like saying to her, wait, just wait. They're going to say my pleasure. And he didn't say it. And I was so frustrated. He was very happy, very, very pleasant. She was asking about sauces, and he goes, or she says, oh, what's this one like? And he goes, oh, that's lit.
And her response is...
We just laughed. I mean, this girl, she's a doctoral student over at SUNY Albany, so, and she grew up in Sri Lanka and like various other countries, so that's not really
The right way to... It would have been full hard-on New England and Massachusetts if he said wicked lit. Yo, that is
There it
wicked
is.
lit.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm glad... Dude, yeah, not saying my pleasure, that's weird. Maybe... Things have
I'm
gotten lazy
surprised.
with S. Truett Cathy dying. Maybe they've gotten a little lazy with their training. The
I
my
didn't know
pleasure.
somebody had died.
What?
I didn't know somebody had died.
Well, no, the president. I mean, this was
Yeah.
probably like 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
S. Truett Cathy. I'm deep in there, Ian. I'm
Yeah.
deep. When we went to Atlanta. Oh yeah, the irony of us. So yeah, how could you eat 7 times in one day? There's not enough meals. Here's the irony, my friend. We were driving my 335-pound friend to try out for The Biggest Loser in Atlanta. So the goal was to eat a lot more food to make him even fatter, so that he would be a bet. Yeah. This happened.
Uh-huh.
So we ate more food because he's like, it was kind of his idea. I was just on board with it. I was like, yeah, fine, fuck it, let's eat Chick-fil-A as much as we can. So he wanted to go in for the weigh-in, and obviously with Biggest Loser, you would assume our math was the fatter you are, the more you got to lose. They want grossly obese people. So he actually made, the funny thing is, man, that was such a fun trip. He went back, he made it through the first round,
Yeah.
and went back for like the interview, like a sit down at a hotel 1-on-1 interview or 3-on-1 interview, and he didn't get past that because they said they changed the theme of the season or something. And because originally when you're trying out, they're like, hey, we're looking for people with this kind of story, like ex-military, or people that have overcome obstacles, or people that whatever, life change, or like that kind of theme. And then they transitioned it to like something, I think it actually transitioned it from something kind of just broad to like military fat people. So he didn't make that cut. But I remember he was so nervous for that interview. I'm like, dude, you're just going to talk about being fat. Like, relax. It's something you know very well. So, but yeah, that trip, man. All right. So we went to the Dwarf House, which is started. I love talking about Chick-fil-A this much because I haven't, like, you went deep into the research, obviously, as a chicken guy, a chicken owner. We went to the very first franchise Chick-fil-A that was opened in an Atlanta mall.
Yeah, okay, so the kiosk.
Dude.
Yeah.
All right. We were, no exaggeration, we drove around the mall we like read the Yelp review, and so many of the Yelp reviews were, don't go here, this is the most ghetto mall you'll ever go into. People get shot and stabbed there all the time. Just people were like a few months ago, one review was, somebody just got stabbed here a week ago. I'm like, okay. And then somebody's like, I remember one chick says, she's like, I'm a black girl, and I wouldn't be caught in there. She's like, that is so hood, that place. My friend and I drove around the mall, did not see white people at all. Not like that was a deterrent, but it was like, oh, we're somewhere else. Like, this is different. We've never been the only, like, it was kind of like one of those, like, mirror parts of life. Like, oh, this is what maybe black folks feel like sometimes. So him and I are, like, reading these reviews, driving around the mall. Like, shit, man. We have to go in. Like, even though we're reading these reviews, don't go there. Even though it's the first one, we're like, we gotta go in. So we park the car, we walk in. Eyeballs on us, man. Like, it was one of those weird experiences. And I remember we go up to order, and the woman's, like, about to take our order, and she looked up at us and, like, did a double take. I was like, whoa, where are we? Like, this is America, right? But I just remember we got our food and we got out of there, and it was just a strange feeling. Like, it was one of the first times in a long time that I was like, oh, you talk about your girlfriend living in Sri Lanka, you know, standing out, and my friend who's not as gigantic as you, but he's been to China and Tokyo, and he's like, I'm so much bigger than everyone. I stand out. It's crazy. I haven't had a standout moment and plus my friend was like 340 pounds. So, and we're walking in there wearing my khaki shorts and slippers. I'm like, okay, it was delicious, but maybe because we're also a little bit terrified. Like, it was such a relief. And yeah, so I don't know if I recommend going to that one because the mall, it was just a shitty mall. And I was like, this is sad. Like, why can't we just keep things nice? Like, make things nice. So anyways, that was like one of my last cultural shocking experiences. And when I tell my brother-in-law, who's a big, massive black dude felon, he's just like, man, you shouldn't have gone in there, Dougie. I'm like, nobody's gonna bother me. Like, I grew up in very diverse neighborhoods. But my friend, the 340-pounder, he's like, he grew up in like Preppyville, South Florida, and he's like, oh, I don't think we should go in. This feels weird. I said, no, we're going in. We're getting that chicken.
I'd have no problem myself.
Yeah, but of course. But at the same time, when you read reviews about people getting stabbed, it's a little.
Most crimes are targeted.
That's exactly it. You know? That's exactly it. Like, and there's a little element of like riffraffness. Like I love whenever I travel to say Italy or something, or I've been to Amsterdam, I've tried just let me find a weird shady neighborhood. Let me find a place where it's like a little grimy, like where really people live. Yeah. So there's something alluring about that. Like, because I just feel like I'm friendly and nobody ever messes with a friendly person. Like, I legitimately say, hi, hey man, how's it going? Like, and people, and maybe I'm just too old now. People don't want to pick a fight anymore. Like, I feel like teenage years, early 20s, like other 20-year-olds were like buck up. But when him and I walked into that mall, it's like, oh yeah, we're older than everyone here. These are like kids. These are like early 20-year-old kids. Like, they just got out of high school or college or whatever. And I was like, they're not even gonna talk to us. But I remember going to some shady areas in Italy. And like, what are these guys looking at me for? So there's something about shady. But yeah, that was my Chick-fil-A story. So I don't recommend it to anyone generally, but a specific person who's friendly like yourself and looks like a giant Viking, sure, maybe go. Or if you're with a 340-pound dude. Like, I was so small next to him wearing my sandals.
I think the big thing is you just can't go in looking like a victim.
That's exactly it.
You know?
That's exactly.
You just have to walk in with confidence, like you belong there, regardless.
But there's so many people that would get that just have never experienced like outside of their gated community. Yeah. Like, so it's kind of weird for me. It's funny for me to see that when I was with my friend, even though he's a massive should be in the NFL dude, and just to see him kind of like, oh no, what am I? I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, dude, relax. Like, everyone loves me. Relax, you're with me. Like, I'll crack a joke. We'll be fine. But yeah, it was just one of those moments. I'm like, okay, I get it a little bit now. Like, when you're the only one of a certain race is so weird. Anyways, it's so weird. Like, I come from a very mixed family. My entire family's mixed. So that people have an issue with race is so confusing to me. Because I grew up I was the minority often in some of my elementary schools. My sister married a big, massive, dark black guy. My brother married a 100% Mexican girl. So I'm like, race is all, I got nieces and nephews that are so mixed. So whenever somebody's like, this whole world now, like, we think racism's so big of a deal in this country, right? We're like, oh, we're so racist. Oh, look at all those Nazis. Oh, look. I'm like, really? Like, people still think about this? I thought we got over it. Like,
that's the biggest problem, though, is that people don't think it exists, and it still does. It's that we're able to walk through life without having all of these experiences that remind us of what it really is like out there. And that's like one little sample that you received of it yourself, but it's very prevalent, and it's insidious. It's in all of us. We're all racist, and we need to confront that on a daily basis and just try to improve.
I feel like we need a different word, right? Like, racism, like, we're all, because the truth is we're all like biologically programmed to see someone that looks different and be alarmed, right? Like, because back in the days when we were like still living in huts, like before Viking time, or like around Viking times, but even before that, anytime you saw someone that looked different, they were a threat. They're like, you look different than me. I don't know where I know they were usually invaders, right? Like the English that are on the shore seeing these big massive Viking ships come towards them and these giants walking on there with axes. They're like, big people are terrible. They're awful. And just think of what happened in America. All the natives that lived here and all the Europeans came here and the Spanish conquistadors came over. They looked way different and they were there and they killed them. So we're all like programmed to see somebody that looks different, and your natural reaction is like threat. Like you can't help it, right? Like sometimes I think you can't. I think it's somewhere in there. I'm trying to figure out why people are racist.
Like that isn't. I wouldn't draw that correlation just because like this is an example where you have this people who have lived in isolation for a prolonged period of time and then they see somebody different, whereas like you and me, we grew up seeing black people everywhere. So it's not like we walk down the street and we see somebody that's black and we're like, oh, you know, like if we do that, that's because of our preconditioned social like thoughts or I don't know how to explain it.
Because you're right, it's insidious and it makes no sense. Like it's irrational, right? To like be like, like, oh, you're different, because
I don't think people are really doing it. Like, I don't think that's how people think these days. I mean, I suppose you've got people who like quicken their pace if they see a black person walking behind them or something along those lines. But I think that those people are a little bit more overtly racist in general. But the covert racism is a real issue. Is because that's the insidious part. These people exist, the KKK or the new, what do you want to call it, the neo-Nazis. The
neo-Nazis. They're such bitches.
They're there, I mean, but that's because everybody kind of lives in their own personal bubble, and that's just what they grew up with. They never had to experience anything different.
Don't you think that's really far extreme, though? Like, how many of them are there? Like, 50,000 in the country? Like... I mean, there's definitely there's weird racists, right? Like you're saying, like the...
Well, there's places, I mean, I was just in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and that blew me away. Similar culture shock to what you experienced, I suppose, at this mall. Whereas the first time in my life I didn't see any black people. And it was just really kind of disconcerting. I think mainly because of how awesome this town was. It felt like Pleasantville almost. And there's just so much money there, and there are just no black people.
That's the old New England money.
Yeah.
That's that old, like, Quaker, Pilgrim, landowning money. Yeah,
that's something I've never experienced in my life.
It's strange.
I grew up around here. I went to Albany High, where, like, I mean, it still was, I think, 25% black, but it didn't always feel that way, you know?
Yeah, all my schools were at most like 50% white.
Yeah.
A lot of Puerto Ricans and a lot of blacks. Mm-hmm. And then the weird people to see, I had were Chinese. Like the first and only Chinese girl I ever knew was in 2nd grade. Like she stood out. Like, whoa, there's a Chinese girl here. This is unusual. Like I remember that. And the thing I remember, it made me really fall in love with just about any culture. At that time I realized I was like, oh, everyone is awesome. No matter where they're from, they're going to have some awesome stuff. Because we had, in this class in 2nd grade, we had everybody bring in a dish of their family, of their culture day. And this girl her family brought in these fried rabbit legs and like some kind of weird sauce. I never knew you could eat a rabbit. And here she brought in rabbit's feet. Rabbit leg, rabbit's feet. Yeah, I think she just called them rabbit's feet. And like everyone in the class like could eat one. And I'd never been offered that. And I was like, what? Like we only eat burgers and chicken. Like occasionally fish. Like somebody eats rabbit. And I remember eating it and being like, oh, this is so good. I love everyone. Like so then I would have Indian classmates. And like, oh my God, I gotta befriend them. I gotta get some of their food. I gotta get invited over for dinner. So I just remember that. That was the first like real... That was a different culture to me because I grew up probably just much like you. Like I didn't experience much difference between blacks and whites. Yeah, we're talking about race. Two white dudes. I don't know how we get here, but this is life, right? It's reality. I never saw much difference in my culture versus black culture. Like I was in that culture, and it was seeing like a Chinese person or an Indian person or a Japanese person, and I'm like, or a Mexican, and I'm like, oh, okay, you're different. Like it was always something a little different about it. Who was I talking about this lately? It was talking about Wu-Tang Clan, and I fell in love with the Wu-Tang Clan like back in the early 90s, mid 90s, and I was like, because they look like my friends. Like my friends all talk like that. My friends all dress like that. So yeah, that was my other buddy I was podcasting with a couple weeks ago, and he's like, how do you end up liking the Wu-Tang Clan? Because you look at me and you hear me talking, and you're like, dude, you are freaking... I had one of my roommates at Drexel who was from Morocco, and he had only been living in the United States. I was basically his first real American that he met, and he had only been living in the U.S. for like 6 months. And I remember he said to me, Doug, you are the whitest white boy I know. And I was like, really? Like, I never heard that, but outwardly that might how I might look. But I grew up like so just not thinking of myself as a white boy. And then he pointed out, I was like, shit, man, maybe I did. Have I gotten soft? Have I gotten too white? Like, but in my roots, I'm like, I want that Wu-Tang Clan. I want that Nasty Nas. I want, like, I love the FUBU. And, like, I used to, like, really care about my sneakers. Like, and love basketball. I always play basketball. And so I was like, I was part of that culture almost, as much as a little. But it gets weird as you get older, right? Like, yeah, I had so many friends at that point who were just my black friends, and then you get older, and then you start getting, it feels a little bit more isolated. And you talk about like going to a place like Portsmouth. I experienced that same thing years ago when my girlfriend and I went to Newport, Rhode Island. I'm like, I said the same thing. I was like, where are all the black people? Like, this is so white. Like, I kind of am not comfortable. Like, this is a cool place. Where's everyone else that's fun?
That was the problem I had with this place, is that it was really beautiful and it was really nice, but it almost felt like that niceness was just for me. And I didn't feel comfortable with that idea, you know?
It's weird. It's a weird thing to recognize in yourself that you're feeling that, and then to say it out loud. Like, even what we're saying here is like, is this okay to say? Like, why do we even feel like that? Like, we shouldn't. Like, we're just people, right? But you're right. Like, I can't deny that racism exists. I know it exists. I go to visit my friend in Alabama or North Florida, and I'm like, oh, there's real racists here. But they're also harmless. Like, when I talk to these people, my friend actually put one of his friends on the phone like a couple months ago, and this guy was just an idiot. And I was like, okay. I was like, is this even a real person? I was like, all right, put my friend back on. I was like, I don't even want to hear that. He's like, dude, I'm sorry about that. That dude is completely a racist asshole, and he just finds any reason to yell. And I'm like, oh, but those people they're still out there. Like, I hadn't come across that kind of just person in a long time. I was like, oh, you're still out there, but you're not in my state. You're not in my town. Like, I don't know you. You're nestled in the stereotypical place where I would expect to find you. This little corner of Alabama, where it's like, Alabama. Like, we have color photos and color film of the governor of Alabama saying segregation now, segregation forever, you know, like trying to like not integrate the schools. Yeah. Like, that wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
So it stands to reason those people still exist, but they're also harmless, because I'm all for I'm a big advocate of free speech. Like, say everything. Like, don't try to stop neo-Nazis. Don't. Let them talk, because the more of us that hear that, we're just going to squash them. Like, we have to let them know that they're bullshit. Like, nobody's with you. Nobody's with you. Like, sure, go do your little Charlottesville rally. I mean, that turned into a mess, like, because a girl ended up dying. And somehow the president felt like he had to get involved. But, so that felt really divisive. But you can, if you just let them talk, you see how dumb they are. And that voice doesn't fit in this world anymore. There's no one on their team. Like I said, maybe there's 50,000 people in this country be like, I hate everyone that's not white. Like, maybe you get 50,000? Maybe? And how many of them own businesses? How many of them are preventing people? Like, how many of them are really contributing? Like, they're kind of just a bunch of angry white dudes.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't think that's the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem is just our lack of awareness. And I mean, the fact that, like, as white men, we have to go out of our way to seek out like what these experiences feel like and such. And I don't think that a lot of white people are. And I mean, yeah, you've got that overt racism. I don't really see that. I mean, you'll hear about it here and there, but it's certainly not like it was in the 60s where like people are getting attacked and such. I mean, it'll happen here and there, but it's not as prolific as it was back then. But so maybe you've got 50,000 to 100,000 people who are just like overtly racist like that. Possibly some of them are in power. I mean, there's certainly some in government. But then there's the millions of people who just don't think that it's a problem because they don't see that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to snipe at people when you don't see them. If you're just watching the news, you're like, oh, look it, they're the worst. Oh, another black guy arrested. Oh, they're the worst. Like, but it's when I sat down with my brother-in-law about a year ago, and we should have podcasted. We should have recorded it, but it was the middle of such a good, it came out of nowhere, the conversation. It lasted like 2 hours, and I was like, oh shit. The whole time I was like, fuck, I want to podcast this. Like, I should be recording this. It was such a great conversation. And he spelled out his life. Like, he grew up in the projects. His mom barely cared, like barely. She was a crackhead or something. Dad, non-existent. So from the and that teachers didn't really care. He's like, basically dropped out of school and just started selling drugs. And he would tell me this whole, like, they had this whole system of, like, he became like the drug manager of the projects. Like, he would have lookouts here, lookouts there, where to put the drugs.
One guy to take the money, one guy to handle
the
drugs.
He said every day there'd be a line of cars starting at 5 in the morning. Like, he was putting in 12 to 15-hour days, he said. And it was kind of amazing how he, like, orchestrated all of this. And he's like, he's like, you know, people try to say make drugs illegal to protect the kids. He's like, it ain't the kids. He's like, he's like, it would be a line of cars waiting for my drugs, mostly crack at this time, he said. And it would always be like white dudes driving Mercedes, BMWs, mom and pops from the suburbs. It was like he's like, it wasn't any kids. Like, so he's like, that whole thing is kind of bullshit. And I was like,
the kids are the ones who are holding the drugs, though.
True. I mean, there's kids that are involved. I guess
they give the kids the drugs because the kids won't face the same charges.
Right. Like, at this point, I don't even know if he was using like little, like, kids like that. It made it seem like he was using like 15, 20. I mean, maybe his peers and maybe a little bit old. That's a good question to ask him if they actually thought about that. Be like, hey man, you're 16. You're not gonna get in trouble. But basically, it just seemed like a free for all. Like, nobody cared. Like, here was just a person, my brother-in-law, just a person just thrown into this world, and it's like, figure it out. Like, good fucking luck.
You said this was in DC?
No. That was my old roommates at college. This was in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Okay.
That's where I grew up. Not in the projects, but I've been to the projects. And it was just like, while he's telling me the story, I'm just like, this was every day for him. Every day. And he couldn't rely on anyone. Like, holy shit, how lucky was I? I had parents that cared. There are still 2 parents that are there. That sent me to school, and they let me know that they cared. Like, I couldn't fuck up. Here was a dude who was just like, was born, and it was just, good luck. Here, I'll feed you when I can. And then he turned like 12 or 13, I think is when he said he started selling. Yeah. And it's just like, don't have to go to school, don't do it. I'm like, what do you do? Like, and eventually you get caught. Like, everyone gets caught. And he went to jail, and he's like, I'm just like, but what would I do in that situation? So for me, it was, I don't even know if it was, one of my takeaways, I'm like, okay, so it's less about color, maybe. It's about money. It's about money, because I also know some white folks that just grew up in a world that nobody cared, and they had a lot of, like, actually, if I'm thinking on one specifically, it was kind of, their experiences kind of mirror each other. And he went down the wrong path too, and ended up selling meth for a little while. I'm like, wow, that seems to be the go-to if you have no parents or you don't go to school. So then I compare myself to that, and I'm like, okay, is there a version of me that would also go down that road? And yeah, probably. You throw any almost teenage kid, boy especially, like, think about when you were 13 and you were like, every dumb idea seemed like a great idea, right? Maybe not all the time. I was kind of an old man when I was 13, but I could see there's a version of me where there's nothing else to do. But, like, nobody gives a fuck. I just want to make some money because money equals freedom, right? So what's the easiest way to make money? All right, I'm going to sell some drugs. There's probably a version of me that would end up the same place he did, and he eventually got caught and did 10 years. And so I'm like, okay, is that because he was black? He doesn't see it that way. He was just like, I made my decisions. But I'm like, but did you really? Because where was the path? And we talk about like just people that are lucky. It's all about who set you off on that path. Like your parents are everything, I think.
Yeah.
You've mentioned your mom. She's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah, she's great. My father's great too.
And that helps.
It
like
does.
that's where it starts.
Yeah.
I think we solved all the world's problems, or at least just bitched about them. Yeah, man, it's a problem still. But I also think if there's a culture that can figure out the weird racism that goes on and why it exists and just trying to crush it, it's our culture. It's the United States culture. Like we should just be able to talk about it and have a little open conversation about it and recognize like, okay, this is a problem. It's better if all of us are good. Like,
that's the biggest problem, is that most of the population doesn't see it as a problem, and it is still a problem. I mean, how could it not be? You're coming from slavery to
not that long ago. We have pictures.
Not that long ago to the Jim Crow laws. Not that long ago. To now, like, at what point do we go from that to being on an equal playing field? And we're not on that equal playing field yet. I mean, it isn't because he's black that he decided to sell those drugs, but the situation where he was born into is, unfortunately, I think, I mean, yes, that's a situation that's prevalent for all races, but I think it's more prevalent for black people.
Yeah, specifically in this country, for sure. For various reasons. Various reasons that none of us have anything to do with, right? Like, we're like, like, but we have to deal with it. Like,
yeah,
it's good for everyone. Like, those are our neighbors. Like, so, but then the question is, well, what do? You don't want to give handouts, but you do need to help people out to get that first step. Like, if I'm just thinking of my brother-in-law, like that's where, like, a free education, where I'd be, like, pro, like, okay, some people, you get to go to college. Like, you don't make any money. Nobody's looking out for you. We need you in college because we don't want you committing crimes for your future. Like, it's better for us. I don't want to get stabbed. Like, the less we take care of people, the more criminals we have, right? Like, so, but that's a hard conversation to have because people don't like giving up shit. Like, what?
That's
I got
the problem.
my taxes.
Like, oh, well, I earned that. And then, I mean, you've got the whole white privilege thing, and anytime somebody's confronted on that, it's all like, but no, I didn't have this, that, or the other thing. It's
yeah, it's a tough one. I don't even know about white privilege. I really don't. It's a weird thing I think about, but I'm just like, is it a white privilege? I don't know. Is it what do you do about it? I don't know if you do anything about it, if it's a real thing or not. Because I truly believe, I'm just like, I'm a big proponent of freedom. Like, as long as you have inequality in opportunity. Like, I had the opportunity to go to school and figure out life, go my own path. But say, like, my brother-in-law and millions of other people just don't have the opportunity. It's, like, not even shown to them as a path. So I'm like, is that white privilege, or is that just, I got lucky? Probably lucky.
I think that we all have the same opportunities. We can all accomplish great things. But white privilege essentially denotes, like, we're starting up here and everybody else is starting down here. You know, it's a little bit easier for us to get there. And like you said, you had great parents. I had great parents. I have a family that helped support me in opening up a business and so on and so forth. That's not an option for a lot of people out there.
Right. You have to hit the lottery several times.
Yeah. I
think the first lottery is being born in the United States.
Yeah.
We all won that. But then it's like, okay, then were you born into parents that I don't even think necessarily being born into money is a positive thing. Like, you see that end badly and lazily for people, I think, but being born into parents who give a fuck is very important. A family that cares and shows you a path is also another thing that cares. And then maybe having some money to be able to support ideas. And like, hey, want to open a chicken business? All right, we're here to help you, support you. Like, that's, you have to hit the lottery several times. And see, this is why the idea of being a white privilege existing, I go the other way with this way. I know for sure there's at least one job I got because I was a white dude. like I got hired by a racist. Like I figured this out like 6 months or a year later when he started saying some weird things about Jamaicans. Like this was in South Florida, a lot of Jamaicans said prom with Jamaicans or someone else, and like he would just go after minorities. And like, oh, he wouldn't have hired me if I was darker. So I was like, okay. So that was a case of me seeing like, okay, being white helped me here. But this isn't cool. This isn't a good situation. Like, I don't want to be working for a dude who sees the world that way. But then that led me to my other thought. I'm like, you know what? I tell my girlfriend all the time, I'm like, the world gets a little bit better every time someone old dies. Like, those are such old... Like, this guy was like 60-something when he hired me. And, you know, that's still that generation that has a hard time, like they're mad at the world. And specifically, if you allow them to get mad at specific people...
Then it's... my grandfather was a really beautiful man. I love him very much, or loved him, unfortunately. But my best friend growing up was black, and I would go over there and he'd be like, oh, when you're bringing your little black friend over. You know, like in a totally endearing way, but still offensive as fuck. And I don't think
Papa, you can't say that anymore.
I don't think he realized. And that's just the era that he grew up in. So there is a sort of refresh that occurs, at least. Like, not all of the lessons that this person learned are passed on to their children, and some of their children may buck those lessons if they decide. So there is a certain renewal that occurs when older people die in that way, I guess.
Yes. Well, I tend to be a little bit blunt in what I'm saying. Like, I'm not rooting for people to die, but it's a reality. When those older generations start dying off, it's like, oh, there's one less racist person. Like, I had a very racist uncle. He was one of my favorite people on earth. He was... like you just said by your grandfather, like you, but this guy was overtly racist, but I loved him. He was fantastic. But whenever he had a chance to complain, or like, I remember I have like a weird memory of like one of those TV, like some. This was back in the like early '90s, but he was still watching like TV shows from the '80s and shit, and like some like black show came on. I don't know if it was Cosby Show or whatever it was. And I remember him saying something. I'm like, I'm a little kid. What do you do? Like, that's gross. Don't say that. So anyways, I just like have to deal with it. Like, I'm a little kid. I'm not really going to fight, but I would go in. I just knew it was wrong. I was like, you're wrong. I'm like, I'm a little kid and I know that's just not what you say. Like, I didn't even get it. Cause like my best friends don't look like me. Like, what's your problem with people not looking like you? So anyways, he died. After he died, got some like little heirlooms and shit. He basically gave me, I can't remember if it was his full collection or like half his belt buckle collection. He had a very, very prodigious belt buckle collection. Belt buckles are dope.
I bet there are a couple of racist ones.
Dude! All right, so I wear my two favorite ones. So I have this one that's still on this. It's been on this belt for like 15 years at this point, I guess. It's a John Wayne one. It was like in this nice like velvet case, and it was a had John Wayne on it, and I forget what it said on the outside, but it was a badass belt buckle. I took that one. And I took one that was the Confederate flag that said, "The South will rise again." This is a bit before, actually, so it's even more than 15 years ago. Probably 20-ish years ago. This is before I knew that the Confederate flag was really like a racist thing. Like, I was so naive and ignorant. But I would rock that thing, and just thinking it was kind of cool. Like, the South will rise again. And it wasn't until, like, I started wearing it and had it for, like, a year or two. I was like, the South will rise again. Why do we want the South to rise again? Those dudes like slave. Like, I thought it was kind of a joke at first. Like, the South will rise again? Yeah, sure, Uncle Gene. And then I'd wear it. The more I thought about it, like, no, there's people that really mean that. And I discovered that probably the first time I went to this part of Alabama that I mentioned earlier. And people like still think it's we went to a flea market and there was so much just Confederacy shit. Like hardcore, like Confederate flags everywhere. These little plastic things of like shooting Union soldiers, like the War of Northern Aggression is what they call it, not the Civil War. And I'm like, oh, this is real to these people. And I saw a bunch of the South will rise again, like on flags, on T-shirts, on hats. And I'm like, oh, this isn't a joke. Like, my uncle had that belt buckle and kind of meant it.
Yeah.
And he's from Connecticut, so I don't even know why he wanted the South to rise again. Like, what made him affiliate with that? But yeah, I think of him and I'm like, okay, he was a cool person. He did his thing. He procreated, did a reasonably productive life, I guess, by most measures. But he wouldn't fit in anymore. Like, if I knew that guy right now, he was still my uncle right now, I wouldn't put up with that shit. I just put up with him because, you know, my parents, we go over there and they love to see us and we love hanging out with them. And, well, that actually, you know, this whole memory of hanging out in their house is such a throwback, because him being the racist sitting there and just sniping at whatever, but also being a cool, funny uncle that would say fun jokes. And then I had my aunt who sat over there on the couch and just the nonstop chain smoker. Nonstop. While, and like in her house, which I always thought was like...
Yeah. I smoke cigarettes, I think that's gross.
Yeah, and it's such a problem.
Yeah.
Here, like walking around downtown, I go to the other sides of the streets. Like, it's a big problem.
I try to avoid people when I'm smoking, but I just mean smoking indoors is...
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Well, yeah, when I first started going to bars, like 21, 22, 23, you could still smoke in most bars and restaurants. And we used to go to a diner, like in Connecticut, and they'd have ashtrays. And like, what? Like, and then people would be smoking right next to you as you're eating. So yeah, that was a throwback. I got old racist uncle, and then woman over here, my aunt, who just didn't care about, I mean, they found she died of lung cancer, as you often do. But she would just be nonstop smoking. And I'm thinking now, where do those people fit in my life now? Like, I wouldn't tolerate those people. I'd be like, no, can't hang out with you. You're smoking so much. I can't hang out with you because you're going to say some racist shit. Like, you're just not... It seems like that was a world ago. And it kind of was. And they grew up in a weird era. I don't know.
I grew up when you could smoke on airplanes still. Dude,
doctors were prescribing that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know, man. All right, I think... God, I hate wrapping these things up. Because I don't even know what... Because I'm like, fuck, I rambled a bunch, and there's so many more questions I want to ask you.
You should start off with a notebook with all the questions that you want to ask, and then...
But I don't know. Because I mean, that's the thing. Often when I'm just sitting with someone, like, we've met 1.5 other times, right? Like, I don't know you. Yeah. Like, this is how we get to know each other, right?
This is true, yeah.
So I have no questions because I'm just like, I just want to see what's on your mind. Give me some more shit. We could do like another 10 minutes.
Well, what's on my mind right now is I'm just trying to figure out what my passion is and what it is that I want to do with my life, and possibly considering getting a job, which is a lot. But also, I don't know, I realized I'm kind of curious how your consulting thing's going, because...
Yeah, because we met with you trying to, me being your tax accountant.
Yeah.
And... I quit on you, what, like a week or two later?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I'm not a tax accountant anymore. I'm kind of, that's not it. That's not in for me. I want to segue into consulting world. So with that, so that's been like a month or so. I'd say 1.5 clients so far, but I enjoy selling this aspect. Like, I need that. Once I could get like to 3, 4, 5, you know, it snowballs. Like, that's the idea. I think that's the only way to do it. And it's to find people that need help. And then it's something I do enjoy. I love spitballing, giving ideas, and just helping guide people. Still, of course, I have the tax background, the organization background, which is one of the things I'm helping with now, is a woman starting a nonprofit. Okay, I'll help you walk through this entire process. That's fine. And I'll help talk all that tax stuff. I was like, I just don't want to be your tax accountant. I don't want to do this return for you. Yeah. And she's like, okay. I was like, but I will walk you through this process of setting this up and help you with the paperwork to get it going. So yeah, the short of it is, it's still just a matter of selling it. I had the sign yesterday. The dude put the wrong phone number on. No. He messed up a number. So I'm like, okay. So probably another few days before I get that. But yeah, ready to just advertise. They're like, hey, who wants to sit and talk and spitball some ideas? Yeah. Because I think I definitely picked that up in you, that you have a varied interests, and that's why you just said, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life. Yeah. Like, that's a thought I have, like, gnawing at me every single moment of every day, right? Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that are like that are just like, I know I have to do something. And you mentioned maybe possibly getting a job, but like it feels gross. It feels gross, right? Yeah. You don't want to because you know it feels wrong. And that's how I feel too. And it's like, okay, where does this end? I don't think it ends. I think it's always just a different morphing. Like I opened the tax business, hate my taxes 3 years ago with knowing that there was going to be an end game and I was going to transition to something else. I didn't know what that was, but I was going to see how far I took this. Now, I was planning on probably a 5-year plan like you did with the chicken. Not that you plan on 5 years. You probably plan for perpetuity. But I was giving this like a 5-year thing. Like, okay, I'm really going to gas it up. But then 3 years in, I'm like, no, it's not time to gas it up. It's time to step out of there because it feels gross. And I just know that AI is something that tax preparing is definitely going to... Tax preparing is something that AI is definitely going to take over. Like, our tax system is so silly and complicated unnecessarily. So within the next 5 years, and I talked to an AI researcher professor who that's his thing, and he's like, oh yeah, tax prep, that's on its way out. And you could see it. Like, H&R Block is using Watson to do their like tax returns and shit. I'm like, okay, 5 years from now, this position's not going to exist. So I'm like, don't invest any more time in that. Let's try consulting. What have I learned that I love? When I take on new tax clients around here, I love talking to that person, like just how you and I just originally met. I just love talking to you and figuring about your ideas, your business, and like, okay, where can I help? Because tax is just paperwork. Like, it's just not too much wiggle room, not too much. It's not room for creativity. It's just paperwork.
Yeah.
So you could just do it yourself if you want it. Just read the rules and be like, okay, I get it. So I'm like, that's gross. And here's another hippy dippy thought of mine. I forget, it's one of the books. I've heard it 100 times. It's something I really believe is if you feel you're doing something wrong or you're just not doing what you love, you have an idea and say you have a job, right? And you're just like, fuck, I just don't want to do this. What I really want to do is X, this. I want to make pottery, or I want to be a consultant, or I want a podcast, or I want to make foot massage inventions, right? Like, I want to open another chicken store, whatever it is. Yeah. Like, if that's where you keep arriving on, like, yeah, that version of me would be pretty happy. Like, you owe it to me to fucking do that. Like, you think you owe it to yourself. This is the way I see it. You think you owe it to yourself. Like, I have to go invent stuff. I have to quit this job and go do something I really love. I see it this way. You owe it to me, you owe it to all of us for you to be happy and like create something. Like, if we're all just walking around being employees and agree that, like, oh, we're all just miserable, like so much of us are. Like 80% of us don't like our jobs. Like, yeah, or higher, and are just doing that slow march and just never really reaching the potential. That's something else that's dying, right? Like that old guard. Like, there's a whole new generation of people that are just like, I want to go seek what the hell the point of life is, and I want to go seek this version of me that's super happy and not spending 10 hours a day being an accountant or auditing or something. Like, what do I really want to do? Those people, we all owe it to each other. Because imagine if Elon Musk was just like, nah, I'm gonna go work, I'm gonna be an accountant. Like, imagine Elon Musk as an accountant. We're not going to Mars. Who's taking us to Mars? He's taking us to Mars instead.
That's the coolest thing about Elon Musk, because everything that he's done for the past like 10 plus years has been with a single-minded goal of getting us to Mars and making us an interplanetary species.
And we need more of him.
Yeah, his main what is his main inspirations for this is the book series Foundation by Isaac Asimov, and it's just, I've read it. It's so good.
Is it a book series?
It's a series of about 6 books, but all of Isaac Asimov's books tie into the same universe, and just like loosely, but it's really great. It's a story that takes place over a millennium, and it's cohesive.
And how old is this book? Or this series?
Maybe 60s, 70s.
Okay.
Yeah, probably all the way through.
And do you recommend reading it?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. I like sci-fi in general, but Dune and the Foundation series are 2 of my favorite books of all time.
Oh, is it in the Dune?
No, it's not. Dune is a different one. That's
okay.
Herbert, but that's an early iconic sci-fi novel.
Do you know how I learned about Dune?
How's that?
I was playing basketball one day, early 20s, I guess, late teens, and some dude on the other team said... He said I look like that dude from Dune. Yeah. And I was like, what? Wait, so you know who? So you're saying I do?
Maudib, you could. Yeah. Maudib stands for like little mouse, though, so it's kind of...
but he kept saying, do you look like that dude from Dune? I was like, what is Dune? He's like, that movie. I was like, what?
Well, the movie sucks.
But you said I look, yeah.
They had 2 attempts at a movie and they were just terrible. But
Yeah,
it's
wasn't
just
there a newer one?
It's a 1,000-page plus book. You can't put that into a movie.
Unless you let Peter Jackson do it, like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Or not. That's
I wasn't too.
That was 3 movies.
Yeah.
Or 5, or whatever. Alright, this is fun. I wish we could just keep talking because I have so many more questions. Or just so many more thoughts. But you live right over there, and you're not going to get a job, so you're going to have free time.
We'll see. I'm still thinking about it. And I just don't know what I would do if I were to get a job. My thought is, like, I should have some sort of income coming in so that I can start investing in assets. But I don't have any income, so I don't have any money to invest in assets yet. And, you know, so I need to get something. I'm thinking even if I were to open up this restaurant, I'd still probably want to get some sort of a job or figure something else out where I've got money coming in. Because I gotta have something to put into buildings and such, you know?
Right.
Stuff.
But isn't this the fun part? The process of figuring it out. I think, like, if I think, here's the way I think. I could already, I feel like I know how my life is going to be 20 years from now. I know where that 20, 30, 40, 50 years is going to be. And I don't want to skip over all of this, like, weird feeling out part, like the figuring out part.
Yeah.
Like, because I remember hearing this lesson from multiple people for years and years and years. I forgot the first time I heard it, but it was like, I missed the process. I missed the funnest part was kind of being broke or kind of not knowing if this was going to work, if this idea was going to work or not. And then, or having, you know, like, now that life is easy and I figured it out, it's kind of boring. Like, the fun part was like I don't know, like you, like, I loved hearing your story. Like, I'm so into, like, I can't wait to see how your story unfolds the next few years. Because I think that's the journey that most of us should be on, which is why I think you owe it to me and you owe it to everyone in your circle that you go try it and figure out the shit out. Because there's so many miserable people in this world.
Yeah.
Like that chick, that lady at KFC, assuming lady, but that's probably just because I'm a sexist. She did break your chicken in half. Like, that's just lazy. It's like, she's miserable.
You
she didn't care.
Have to break it. You just take it by the tip and let it dangle. You know. Like, I don't know. I was just blown away by that.
All right,
things were like that.
So you might have given me a book to read today because I'm going to be on the train for 5 hours to Boston. So Isaac Asimov. I have a couple that I am still reading, but if you're telling me, this is the first I'm hearing of Elon Musk's inspiration. So I might.
It's the first foundation novel in the Isaac Asimov, the book series, and it's the whole premise of the story is we are like 30,000 plus years out. Totally, like, on hundreds of different planets. At this point in time, nobody even knows what Earth is anymore. It's, like, that far out.
Oh, God.
And there's an emperor who, like, loses power, and somebody who uses some sort of algorithm to predict the future determines this course of action that will shorten the time of chaos between this emperor and the next emperor down from 30,000 years to 1,000 years. And it tells the story of those 1,000 years and the process of how all these things that this man, I believe Sheldon Silver was his name,
okay,
all of these processes that this man put together in his short lifetime, and just watches it all play out. And it's pretty awesome.
I'm hooked.
Yeah.
I took the bait. I'm in. All right, brother. This was fun.
Yeah.
Goodbye, everyone. I hope the audio works.
Adios.
Later, bud.